Hello, Mr. Ritter, and thank you for your time. This is your first question. Uh, we've seen a dramatic paradigm shift in military industrial equipment. Trillion-dollar systems like the F-35 and Patriot interceptors have failed on the live battlefield against Iran's asymmetric doctrines. As a former military officer, how do you assess the catastrophic hit to the Wall Street? Has this war officially turned the war profiteering business model into a negative growth trap for defense giants like Lockheed Martin and other uh, factories who build these kind of expensive equipments?
First of all, to understand that, to answer this question, we have to go back in time because there was a time when the United States knew how to fight and win wars, where we have a defense industry that produced material that made the American fighting man stronger and allowed us to persevere on the field of battle, even in a sustained conflict. And this, was a model that worked well in World War II. It's a model that served us during the Cold War. We were ready to fight large-scale ground combat operations in Europe and anywhere in the world. We proved that during Operation Desert Storm, where we mobilized 750,000 military personnel and sent them to the Persian Gulf to defeat the world's fourth largest army. But then the Cold War ended, and there was sort of a paradigm shift. We stopped being willing to pay for, because these militaries that exist to be able to, on a moment's notice, fight large-scale ground combat, they're very expensive to build, to maintain, to sustain, to train. And we were looking for a peace dividend. And so we began to de-emphasize large-scale ground combat because we believed with the demise of the Soviet Union, there would be no need for large-scale ground combat. And we thought to maximize our status as the world's sole remaining superpower. And so our goal became not to defeat an enemy, but to intimidate an enemy. And one way you intimidate an enemy is through the perception of technological supremacy, so that the enemy believes that the weapons the United States has are so superior to anything they have, they do not want to engage in a fight. And if the United States does engage into a fight, it's supposed to be a very short duration fight where we overwhelm people with the majesty of our technology. And it worked. We intimidated people here, there, everywhere. But look, there's two examples in recent history where it didn't work. Afghanistan, where the Taliban just said, we're going to fight. And in Iraq, where the resistance said, we're going to fight. And there, American technological supremacy meant nothing because it became a battle on the ground between soldiers. The United States was not ready to engage in this kind of fight. We were casually averse. We didn't fully commit. And so we defeated ourselves. It's not as though the Taliban beat us. The fact of the matter is, in every stand-up fight, we beat the Taliban. They can't beat us. We have technological supremacy. They just weren't willing to quit. And they kept coming at us. And they persevered. And in Iraq, it's the same thing. Every stand-up fight we won, hands down. But we lost the will to sustain. It became a political defeat. But it wasn't a military defeat because we were never decisively engaged. With Iran, this is a game-changing moment because Iran decisively engaged us, not on their terms, on our terms. We're the ones who dictated the terms. We're the ones who initiated the attack. We're the ones who, brought together, as much of our American technological supremacy and Israeli technological supremacy, which is modified American technological supremacy, and said, we will beat you. We will intimidate you. You will collapse. You will fall down. And Iran didn't. Iran stood there, paid a price. Let's not pretend that Iran didn't pay a price. I mean, you don't go 37 days with two modern air forces using very advanced technology and not pay a price. But Iran was not defeated. We were, because our model doesn't work over time. Our model is shock and awe. Our model is to intimidate. And when an enemy, an opponent, is willing to stand there and pay the price, stand there and not retreat, we can't sustain that fight. We lost this war because we ran out of ammunition. We lost this war because we ran out of the ability to continue this fight. We lost this war because Iran had a better model. If people can call it an asymmetric model. I don't. I think Iran didn't build something to oppose us. Iran built something to maximize Iran's capabilities. They went deep underground. They developed very effective weapons. They have a political system that is has resilience and sustainability. And the most important thing is they have a nation of people who rallied around the cause of their nation when their nation most needed this support. Our shock and awe couldn't defeat them. We couldn't defeat them politically. We couldn't defeat them economically. And we couldn't defeat them militarily. And when we speak of war, remember, Clausewitz says war is an extension of politics by other means. And politics is both politics and the economy. Go back to 1992 and Bill Clinton's famous little statement on his war room, it's the economy, stupid. That's all American politics is about, is the economy. So Iran won this war hands down. And this is the paradigm shift, because the United States of America has never before been defeated on the field of battle. Never in our entire history has a nation stood up to us and beat us in our own game. Iran has just done that. And now this is a shock, because our entire posture globally is predicated on our ability to intimidate, to make people back down, on the perception of American power. But we now have been shown that if a nation is willing to stand up and pay the price, the United States can and will be defeated. Not politically, but militarily. See, this is the difference. Iran beat us in a military fight. This isn't just about the American people losing the will to fight. This is about the American military not being able to accomplish the mission militarily because Iran did it better. And this is a game changer, because now the Russians, the Chinese, everybody learns from this, and there's a recognition now. Look in Europe. Prior to this conflict, people were saying, yeah, Russia may be good on the battlefield, but if the United States and Europe bring to bear the totality of their air power, their air supremacy, the F-35, the F-22, the JDAM, all these things, Russia will collapse. Well, we brought the totality of all that and more against Iran, and Iran didn't collapse. The lesson learned here is that air power is overhyped. The technology is overhyped. And the other thing is it's very expensive. We burned through this expensive ammunition at prodigious rates, and we can't replace it. And this only magnifies the scope and scale of the defeat, because the defeat isn't just about now. The defeat is about the long duration. Iran strategically defeated the United States.
Yes, I agree. I think Scott is absolutely correct. The United States has lost wars, but not they didn't lose any of the battles. They lost because they didn't have the stamina. Ironically, in Afghanistan and in Iraq, to a large degree, it was also due to Iran that they could not maintain their occupation, because the Iranians were supporting the Taliban, because the Iranians, despite their enormous differences with the Taliban, with regards to women, with regards to the rights of women and the rights of different communities and cultures in Afghanistan. But Iran still believed that the occupation, the U.S. occupation, was evil, and that it was harmful for Iran and for the entire region. So Iran gradually built, under General Soleimani, a relationship with the Taliban. And interestingly, he did help the Taliban evolve somewhat, not to the degree that we would like to see, but still they're not the Taliban of the era of 9/11 and so on. It's much more moderate, perhaps, than then. And the same is true in Iraq. But as Scott said, this is a totally different war. And if one takes, and here I want to pay tribute to Ayatollah Khamenei, the martyr, because if one follows Iranian politics, which is very complicated, and Piers Morgan often when he argues with me, he thinks that like this is a dictatorship where no one can speak, and it's the exact opposite. You have different factions, different parties, and everyone they're at each other's throat often. And one of the key debates that existed in Iran for the last 3-4 decades was Iran's military posture and Iran's military strategy, and developing a missile program, developing a drone program. It was ridiculed, not only in the West by Western media and Western think tankers, but inside Iran, many people were ridiculing the armed forces and making fun of their progress, and saying all this is just wasted money, the underground cities and the different technologies that Iran was pursuing and developing indigenously. And they were saying this is just money wasted. But Ayatollah Khamenei persevered, and he believed that at the end of the day that Iran was facing a real threat from the empire, and the only way to counter that threat is to have a defense capability that can stand up to that threat. So instead of purchasing a number of airplanes, expensive airplanes, and helicopters, and the sort of military equipment that you see ordinary armed forces across the world purchase for their military, he chose a different path, because he knew that at the end of the day, on the battlefield, if we want to face the empire with the tools of the empire would definitely defeat us. We wouldn't have the firepower. Our air force would soon be decimated. Even if we had the most advanced jets, or if we had the most advanced equipment, we'd be outgunned, we'd be outnumbered, and we'd be defeated. So he and his military advisors and those who were leading the armed forces had to think about how to develop a defensive and offensive military strategy that would be able to outlast aggression from the most powerful country in the world. And it worked, to the astonishment of the world. During the war, I've been in contact with friends from China and Russia, friends of Iran. And it was clear during the first few days, they all thought that Iran, especially during the first 3-4 days, they all thought Iran was going to collapse. They were very polite about it. They were very curious about what was going on. They were listening to me when we had conversations. But it was clear that they were very skeptical about Iran's capability to stand up. And after a week, or I don't remember precisely. Each person was a bit different from the other. But after a week, 10 days, things were changing. And the same is true, and I believe this. The same is true within Iran itself. There were those in Iran who were confident of a victory. I can't give numbers, but they were a large segment of society, maybe 50%, I don't know. But the other half, perhaps, again, I'm just guessing. These are not based on any knowledge. I'm throwing a number out there. The other half of society were skeptical. They were very, they were concerned, even though everyone remained calm. And that was one of the very interesting things about the first week of war. There was no rush on shops and to buy bread or gasoline. And of course the leader was martyred, but despite that, things were calm. But gradually, after week, 10 days, everyone grew extraordinarily confident. So I think that Scott was a professional soldier. I was just a volunteer during war. I was never an officer. I don't claim to know much about warfare. But I think that what happened in this war will be taught at military academies in important countries across the world for many decades to come.
I could just follow up on that real quick. Before the war started, people asked me how I thought this would unfold. And I put on my professional military officer's hat. And I said, look, I understand politicians, but professional military officers, commanders, don't normally engage the enemy unless they are confident in their ability to defeat the enemy. And we knew what the military problems facing us were with Iran. First and foremost, we needed to secure the Strait of Hormuz long term. We could lose it short term, but we needed to secure it long term. And we need to have the confidence that no matter what, when conflict termination came about, we controlled the Strait of Hormuz, not Iran. That's an absolute initial going in. And so I believe that if our politicians were going to order an attack against Iran and our military was going to concur, that we had to have had a plan, because it doesn't make any sense to begin a war and not have a plan. We had to have had a plan. And I said, if we have a plan, knowing the US military, it might very well succeed because we are professional. We don't play around at war normally. And the other thing was ballistic missiles, that we knew what the problem is. We faced this with Iraq and we lost. We had to learn our lessons. We knew what needed to be done to suppress a ballistic missile capability. And we knew that if we were going to engage Iran, they were going to decisively respond with missiles and drones. And we needed to have a plan to suppress this, to defeat it, to overcome it. And if we were going to go to war, that we had to be confident that this plan was going to work. What happened is we went to war with an assassination plan. The easiest plan in the world, to murder a man who's at his own home, not hiding. I mean, it's not a feat of military honors what we did to Ali Khamenei. It's actually a crime what we did. But having said that, where was the rest of it? We didn't have a plan. We didn't even consider those options. That's the shocking thing. Because once this war started and I realized we didn't have a plan, Iran's victory was inevitable. Inevitable. If we don't have a plan going in, and Iran has been preparing for over 2 decades for this very conflict, we're going to lose that war. So to me, I wasn't confident in Iran's ability to prevail when the war started, because naively, I believed that my country would be better prepared for this war, that we would have studied our enemy and that we would have made the preparations necessary to overcome the enemy's preparations, or else the military leaders should do what all professionals do. Tell their political bosses, we lack the military capability to accomplish this mission at this time. If this is the mission you want us to accomplish, you need to let us accumulate sufficient power to carry out the task. And if the military said, yes, we're going to do this, I believed, based upon past prior experience, that we would have the capabilities. It turns out we didn't. We didn't even consider it. We just assumed that by assassinating Ali Khamenei, Iran would collapse and everything else would solve itself. That's amateur hour. That's political immaturity. And that's a lack of professionalism on the part of the US military that's unprecedented in our history. We've never gone into a fight this ill prepared.